mistakes you can make on a cruise, and then there are really bad mistakes. And today, I've got a list of the 20 really bad mistakes you should avoid at all costs on your cruise. Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. Now, in order to have a great cruise, you want to avoid some really common pitfalls and mistakes that many people that are new to cruising and even grizzled veterans like myself can make from time to time. Now, a small mistake can have a negative impact on the enjoyment of your cruise, but there are some really big ones out there, and I don't want it to ultimately ruin your cruise. There's a difference between like, well, this didn't go my way versus, oy vey, I made a big oopsie. Let's start with number one, and that is packing important items in your checked luggage. When you arrive at the cruise terminal on embarkation day, you have the choice of giving your luggage to the porters, and I do that every single time. Most passengers do this as well because who wants the hassle of taking all your suitcases around the ship on embarkation day? But before you hand them off, double check you have everything you need to get on the ship for the embarkation process. This means identification, medication, items for your kids, and all that put in your carry-on bag. Most importantly, your passport, your credit card, and money. Never put that in your checked bags. Number two is bring the wrong documentation. One of the top ways you can ruin a cruise is never getting on it because you were denied boarding in the first place. Before you book a cruise, make sure to review which necessary documentation is required for sailing. Now, in some situations, as an American, you can cruise with just a driver's license and a birth certificate, but you gotta be super certain that's one of those cruises. So, double check your citizenship requirements, residency requirements, and where in the world you're embarking a cruise ship. Truly, the easiest way around this is just to get everybody a passport. But if you are an American and you're cruising out of the same port in the United States that you'll return to later on, like a cruise that begins in Miami and ends in Miami, then yes, you could cruise with a birth certificate and state-issued ID. Keeping in mind, by the way, the birth certificate needs to be the original one, not a photocopy. Speaking of passports, that leads us to our next oopsie, and that is having an expired passport. So in addition to remembering to bring your passport, make sure it'll be valid at the time of travel. You don't want to realize that your passport expired as you're packing for the sailing. You must ensure your passport is valid for at least 6 months after your cruise. So if your cruise is in June, but your passport expires in July, you may be denied boarding. Kind of depends on where you're sailing to. Something else that I think will really ruin your cruise is not researching what to do in port. I generally don't recommend winging it when it comes to visiting a new cruise port. With limited time in each destination, you're going to make the most of your time there and have the best experience possible. While you don't have to plan your day out to the minute, knowing the basics of what the port has to offer can really help. So you really want to research the port's top attractions, culture, food, and of course language. It's better to be knowledgeable about what you can do in port so you don't regret missing out on something super important when you get back later. Next up is a really costly one, and this made the rounds of the internet recently, and that is not putting your phone into airplane mode. Recently, there was a cruise ship passenger who went on Royal Caribbean and racked up $1,300 in roaming fees because they forgot to put their phone into airplane mode. Actually, in this case, they just weren't aware of it. Regardless, don't do that. When you get on board your cruise ship, put your phone into airplane mode. Otherwise, your phone is going to incur heavy roaming fees because it's going to try to connect to the signal that's on your cruise ship, and that is out of your network, and that will get really costly international fees. Especially true also if you're in other countries, because in that situation, once again, you're out of your network, and that can rack up fees as well. Another, I can't believe people still do this, but booking a flight the same day your cruise begins. One piece of advice that I give over and over and over again, and you may all think, well, Matt said this a bunch of times. Well, guess what? People still do it. And that is booking a flight the same day your cruise departs. Booking a flight that arrives the same day your cruise departs is very risky. Airline travel is just so unpredictable, so be sure to plan extra travel time. No matter how confident you are that 6 a.m. flight is going to work, I'm telling you, this happens more often than you think. People miss their cruise completely, and that's all the money out of them. You're not getting your money back for that situation because they booked the flight the same day. Speaking of flights, also booking your flights too early on disembarkation day. The amount of times I've seen people post on the Royal Caribbean blog message boards, hey, I've got a cruise that comes back to Fort Lauderdale at 6 a.m. Can I make a 8 a.m. flight? And the answer is no. Just because your cruise allegedly gets back at 6 a.m. on disembarkation day doesn't actually mean that's when you can get off the ship. Disembarkation usually starts at 7 a.m. or so, with most guests off the ship by 9:30. Disembarkation, travel to the airport, check bags, and going through security can take a few hours, especially if that port is far from the airport. So personally, I don't recommend booking any flight before noon, although it's important to research travel times from your cruise port to the airport. Some airports like Fort Lauderdale are located just a few minutes away from the cruise terminal, whereas others require far more travel time. Another really big oopsie is to pick the cheapest cruise you see out there. Everyone loves finding a good deal, but don't book a cruise based solely on price. Booking a cruise based on price ignores other factors like the ship size, itinerary, activity options, and stateroom choices. Before you just book the cheapest cruise you can find, be sure to consider these other factors, as you don't want to book a cruise that's a good deal only to realize it's not the itinerary you wanted or it doesn't have the things on board you're really looking for. Speaking of that, picking the wrong ship in general. Price aside, Royal Caribbean has a lot of different ships out there, but amenities, size, and activity options vary widely. If you're traveling with kids, for example, you really should consider a ship that has more family-friendly activities. Voyager, Freedom, Icon, and Oasis-class ships all have water slides, splashaway bay, a flow rider, zip line, and ice skating. But if your main goal is to visit exotic ports around the world, well, then you're going to want a smaller ship, because those smaller, older ships are the ones that do go to places like Fiji, the Panama Canal, and Croatia. So research the ship, what it includes. Don't just blindly book based on price or assuming, oh, all the Royal Caribbean ships are all the same, I'm just going to book the first one I can find. This next mistake can really ruin a couple days of your cruise, and that is not packing sunscreen. No one wants to get sunburn, and a bad burn can really impact the enjoyment of your vacation. If you're cruising to a warm destination, you'll probably be spending much more time in the sun than you're used to. So whether lounging on the beach or sightseeing in a city, always apply and reapply sunscreen. It's really, really important. Also, booking shore excursions in every port might seem like something you should do, but this isn't necessarily the case. While shore excursions can offer a stress-free way to see the top sites in any port you're visiting, they come with several drawbacks. Large tour groups, little time spent in each destination, and a higher price than exploring independently are just some of the cons of booking a tour. Many ports can easily be explored without an organized tour. Plenty of passengers prefer disembarking the ship and spending their day exactly how they want to spend it. Whether that means taking a taxi to a local beach or shopping downtown, there are a lot of ways you can do time in port without a shore excursion. Some classic examples of these are Cozumel, Mexico, San Juan, Puerto Rico, Juneau, Alaska, and Barcelona, Spain. Another mistake you shouldn't make is really getting upset about itinerary changes. Now, itinerary changes are possible on every sailing, so it's important to understand that the cruise you originally planned could change somewhat. Changes can occur due to weather, port restrictions, medical emergencies, unrest in ports of call, and a variety of other unforeseen activities. Therefore, you really need to be flexible with changes. So instead of declaring your cruise ruined due to an itinerary change, view the change with excitement instead of anger. If you're visiting a new destination, research the best things to do in port, local cuisine, and culture. If it's a port stop that was replaced with a sea day, well, plan something special for that extra time on board, like visiting the spa or reserving dinner at a specialty restaurant. If it's a port you've been to a bazillion times before or have no interest in, take advantage of less people on board your cruise ship on that port day and take advantage of lower lines and less crowds in general. As with everything in life, changes happen unexpectedly, but you shouldn't let an itinerary change ruin your cruise. Another top mistake is being rude to crew members. I can't believe this still happens all the time, but Royal Caribbean's crew members work so hard on their multi-month contracts. Many crew work 7 days a week while still maintaining a positive attitude and helping you and other guests in every way they can. While most operations do run pretty smoothly, there's always a chance something goes astray. If your dining room waiter accidentally brings you the wrong appetizer or a bartender charges you for the wrong drink, approach the situation politely. Being rude and yelling at crew members is never a nice way to go about your vacation. If something bothers you, you can calmly ask a crew member to resolve the problem and, of course, escalate it when necessary, but just don't take it out on a crew member and go and erupt in anger. A surefire way to ruin any cruise vacation is by missing your cruise ship and being left behind in port. Whether you arrived late on embarkation day or lost track of time at the beach in Mexico, missing the ship is really not what anyone wants. Now, missing your ship is more often than not an expensive and time-consuming ordeal, especially if you're traveling without a passport. You've got to track your time in port and make sure you give yourself plenty of time to get back. If all aboard time is 5 o'clock, that means you've got to get back at least an hour or two ahead of that time, not try to time it within a few minutes of that 5 o'clock time. Also, I think one of the biggest mistakes these days is not purchasing travel insurance, because by not having it, it could really ruin your vacation, maybe even your finances. Traveling can lead to many surprises, including canceled flights or an emergency doctor visit. But having travel insurance really makes sure that you're financially covered in most of these unpredictable situations. In fact, Royal Caribbean's onboard medical services are not covered under any insurance plan. You're going to be charged for it in cash after get reimbursed later on. Travel insurance, though, would cover medical services you may be required once on board. You may laugh at this one, but not leaving clothes out on disembarkation day can really be an embarrassing and bad oopsie. Before you put your luggage out of your stateroom door on the final night of your cruise, make sure you have clothes to wear off the ship the following morning. The night before disembarkation, you can opt to place your luggage in the hallway, and then Royal Caribbean will transport to the cruise terminal for you to pick up the next morning. This is a great, hassle-free way to move your luggage from place to place, but you need to have daytime clothes with you because a lot of people pack everything up while they're in their pajamas, put it outside, and then realize when it's time to get off the ship in the morning, they don't have clothes that are not pajamas to wear. And yes, there are people that have walked out the ship wearing, well, pajamas would be a stretch to put it that way, but clothes that they probably wouldn't want to be seen in public in. Speaking of packing, I think forgetting medicine is probably one of the most important things you really need to make sure you don't forget on your cruise, especially prescription medicine that you require. Check, and then double check to make sure you have all the necessary medication. In fact, you really want to pack extra. What happens if there's a delay getting home or your cruise is delayed? You want to make sure you have some extra prescription medication with you just in case. Now, while you will find pharmacy options in ports and in the ship's medical center, there's no guarantee that your specific medication or brand will be stocked. So it's a really good idea to bring that along with, by the way, over-the-counter medications like motion sickness medication, ibuprofen, anti-nausea tablets, and others. One surefire way to negatively impact your cruise vacation is by selecting the wrong cabin type or location. So before you book the cheapest or first cabin that you see, you really want to consider what you're looking for in a vacation. If you plan to spend the whole day outside your cabin, party animal, well, an inside room could be a really great budget-friendly option. But if you'd rather enjoy the privacy of a balcony, well, a higher category stateroom probably makes more sense for you. Also, your cabin location is another important factor to consider when booking a cruise. Some cabins may be more prone to movement than others, whereas some are located closer to the certain venues on board. So before picking your location of the ship, you really want to make sure you're aware of where the best cabins are on board. Something else that can really ruin your cruise is arguing with other passengers. Now, at best, it might just lead to some awkwardness when you run into them later on the cruise, but at worst, it could lead to some serious consequences. Did you know that every Royal Caribbean ship actually has a jail on board? Yeah, you don't want to go on there. With thousands of passengers on any ship, arguments and conflicts can occasionally occur. But just like when you're on land, honestly, it's just best to avoid these conversations about politics and controversial topics with fellow passengers. Be courteous to those around you, and you'll avoid most of the major issues. And if you really do get in a situation where someone has slighted you, cut you off, whatever, at the end of the day, is it really worth a fight over it? Ignore it, move on, and enjoy your vacation. And the last mistake that could really ruin, well, your post-vacation experience is not checking the bill at the end of the sailing. Every purchase you make on board is charged to your SeaPass card. You really want to check your account balance thoroughly throughout the cruise via the Royal Caribbean app, and my recommendation is to look at the balance periodically for any errors. It's not so much that you went to the spa, you probably do remember doing that, it's the drink that was accidentally charged, it's the towel that was charged to you, and other erroneous charges to your account. You may occasionally run into this, so it's always better to catch this mistake while on board instead of being at home. If you don't check your invoice till the cruise ends, you're going to have to call Royal Caribbean and wait on hold, and it takes a lot of time to get that all rerun and then refunded back to you. It's so much easier to go to guest services while on board to take care of the billing issues. All right, there you go. 20 of the worst mistakes that really could ruin your cruise vacation, so don't make them. Let me know in the comments below, which of these have you done before, and which of these will you never do because you've made the necessary steps and taken precautions to avoid them? Let me know in the comments below. While you're down below our video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. That way, YouTube lets you know we have a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. We'll talk again real soon.